evening and welcome to Studio 12. I'm your host, Tamara Banks. We have a special taped episode of our show this evening, so we'll not be taking your calls tonight. Tonight we are joined by Diana Joy, author of the book, Looking Through the Eyes of an Unseen Child. The book explains Diana's personal journey, including her struggles as a child in an abusive household and dealing with multiple personality disorder. We'll discuss her book and what she hopes readers will get from this message. We are honored and pleased to have you here tonight. Thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Let's sort of start from the beginning. In terms of your childhood, many of us have sort of sketchy childhoods, but I think yours is quite unique. Can you sort of walk us through what your childhood was like, and now as an adult you realize how different and you know, even dysfunctional, if I can use that word, that was compared to most other kids. What was that like for you?
Well, we lived on the run most of our childhood. In and out of homes, on the run, living in buses and in station wagons and different things like that. We didn't live a normal life. As soon as someone suspected abuse of any kind, we were back on the streets again. Or as soon as my parents were detected, because they were criminals, we would have to pack up and move again. So it was always unexpected. It could be in the middle of the night, you know, sleeping on an old mattress, and all of a sudden the next thing we knew, we were sleeping in a vehicle. You know, that's one of the things that strikes me, is not only in a vehicle, or in the book I know you describe camping, what some of us would consider camping, and in fact that's how you lived for weeks at a time? That was staying hidden. Yeah. You know, as they say now, on the down low. Yeah. Right, right. Yeah, it was to stay out of the eyes of anybody who could have found my father. And so. And very rarely did you all go to school, right? Yeah, really, really hard to go to school when you're on the run. And when people would see us, you know, then we were quickly put in school. Yeah. Yeah. I know it's difficult sometimes to talk about what our childhood was like, and especially when there's abuse involved. But I think it's important, as we explain to people when we get to the point about talking about multiple personalities, what kinds of situations, abuse, neglect did you and there were 5 of you all together, right? Six. You and 5 others, okay. Explain to the audience what life was like on average as a child. I mean, as I read the book, which is an amazing, powerful book, I feel like fear. I mean, at any time you turn around, there's going to be some danger. And a child just shouldn't grow up like that. Kind of talk to us a little bit more about that. Well, that's exactly what it felt like. You never knew what was around the corner. And so when I was writing the book, that's what I wanted to make sure people had that same feeling that I felt, never knowing what, you know, where I was going to wake up, where I was going to be, what was going to happen next, who was going to be in my bed, you know, what to expect. I never knew. And so that fear of you know, in parts of the book, one thing that really stands out is the red cigarette. Sleeping in a room and looking, you know, all of the siblings, we were all snuggled up on a mattress, and just the reality that there was a red cigarette. And he always looked for that. Yeah. When I spoke with my twin sister, you know, that was one thing that stood out for both of us, looking for that cigarette. And that meant that my father was in the room. If you could smell it or see the little red dot in the dark, you knew he was watching you. Isn't that interesting that smells can really bring back a memory to you, and by smelling the cigarette smoke, I mean, I wonder if even today you smell certain fragrances and you go, and that really brings back a memory to you. Like I was speaking to some women last week, and they had already read the book, and so they were asking me different parts of the book, and I said, well, you know, the very beginning is the strongest, you know, part, because that's when I first flash back, and that's to the smoke-filled room, and everybody slowly started putting their cigarettes down,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
and trying to put them out. They were like, is this bothering you? Is this bothering you? And I'm like, not anymore. And that was a really good feeling to say, no, I'm okay now,
Yeah.
you know.
One of the things I remember too in the book was that it wasn't just the physical abuse, it was the mental abuse. And at one point,
Oh, yeah.
I think you're what, 5 or 6 years old, and your father asks you, he says, okay, you can sit up front in the car. All the other kids have to pile in the back. And then he took you into the store, some convenience store, and you were able to get a candy bar, but the other kids couldn't have anything, and everybody was starving at this point. What was that like, and what did that make you feel like at that time, and what do you think he was trying to do then? What was he trying to prove, looking back on it now?
Oh, well, he was playing the game that he used to play, in which, you know, I was his favorite child. You know, I think, you know, I make it very clear that each one of my siblings have their own way of looking at life and their own stories to tell, and I don't tell them for them. But for me, he would play a game in which I would get a treat or I would get something, and in return, you know, then he would get sexual, you know, whatever he wanted from me. And luckily, you know, I was blessed with multiple personalities to where there were different personalities, as you read in the book, that take over during those times. So.
And there were, if I can remember them all, Ruby, Crystal, Little Mother, Peter.
The twins.
The twins, which
Sue
were
and Dee.
Sue and Dee. I'm
Yeah.
missing somebody. Shadow.
Shadow, Midnight.
Uh-huh.
You're asking somebody who has much more than I put in there. So I have to go, okay, which one? Because there's a lot more than is in the book. I didn't want to traumatize the reader. I wanted to keep it down, keep it simple. Excuse me, I have a cold. So, but to help other people understand basic of what it's like, and that it's not like, you know, what you hear.
Right, it's not like the movies and Hollywood. It seemed like, as I recall, was Peter the first one who appeared, at least the first one that you explained. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Peter and how he sort of helped you have a childhood, it seemed to, you know, let's go play, let's escape.
Peter taught me how to play. You know, he made it safe. Even having to sit and listen to my father at night, he would keep me, my father would keep each one of us up at night. And you just have to listen to his stories over and over and over. And one of the main stories that I was to listen to is how I was born and how I wasn't supposed to be here. That I was the second twin up in my mother's ribs. And he would walk me through the birth as if it was a nightmare, not something that I should be celebrating. You know, and so Peter would always be there, you know, making faces, or he had a way of helping me get through that. So.
And you didn't really have a mother figure until later when your oldest sister, Karen, came back, but that's how you developed Little Mother, and that was sort of your protector?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think that multiple personalities are created. I've always had them.
Yeah.
So I can't really explain how they, you know, happened. Like, yeah, Karen is a lot like Little Mother, but Little Mother always existed.
Right.
To me. I'm not sure when and how and where, you know. Peter was always there to sit in the chair, you know. I don't know how he became.
Right.
He was just there, and, you know, and I could step back and it would be okay. You know, the chair wouldn't hurt so much and I could step back and Peter would take over.
And so it really became a survival skill.
Yeah.
To survive the abuse, the neglect.
It was a blessing.
How, and I know we've talked about this, it's something that you lived with,